Hello, everybody, dear friends, dear colleagues. I'm very pleased that I have been honored to open this webinar. I'm very honored that I have an opportunity to welcome a very precious speaker today that will keep our attention. But on very beginning, I would like to share with you a few technical information. That is the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and made available on ESPD social media channels. I would like to please you to mute your microphone to ensure the quality of the session. Please use the question or chat box to ask questions or to give us your comments. And you can activate closed captioning by clicking on the icon on the bottom of your monitor, live transcript, and you can zoom the panel. So this is the usual technical info. I would like to welcome all of you on this very important topic of the webinar, taking in consideration that the early childhood intervention system is very important, but the system as a system is very poor developed or not introduced in the national legislation in most of the country, especially especially in the east part of the Europe. I think that today it will be very interesting webinar, and we will hear a lot of information that could be very useful for us who are enthusiastic actors of creation of a new system of early childhood development. Very important. I'm giving floor on my Michaela, a program director of International Step-by-Step Association.
Many thanks, Vasilka, and a warm welcome also from ESA's side. We are very honored to be organizers together with the European Association of Service Providers for People with Disabilities. And equally happy because this is a fruit, I would say, of the work that has been carried out in one of our joint learning labs in the association, where experts are coming together to learn, to discuss, and find solutions to either policy development or policy implementation in different fields of early childhood development. The topic of integrated systems stays at the heart of our work in ESA, and this is one of the reasons for which we have very much supported the organization of this webinar. The field of early childhood intervention has a long history, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from the efforts that have been put over the years in many countries, and especially that we are talking about the region where ESA is operating, Europe and Central Asia. And I'm more than pleased to have Emily, whom I think that anybody who works in the field would know her name, to be sharing with us a lot of the insights that she has learned over the years by working in so many countries about how to nurture the setting up or strengthening the integrated early childhood intervention systems. It's a hard work, but I think that we can learn from Emily that it can happen. It only requires a lot of expertise, a lot of commitment, passion, and a lot of innovative approach to how we are building and we are sustaining our systems. I'm very happy to be here. And again, thank you, Eric, also for making this happen and for helping all of us to learn more how we can be better in the work we are doing, especially for the most vulnerable. Now we are looking at those that might encounter developmental delays, but I think a lot of learning is can be expanded to many other vulnerable groups. Thank you again for all of you for being here, and looking so much forward for this webinar.
Great. Thank you very much, Michaela. It is a real honor to be here today to moderate this session. I would like to repeat what Vasilka in the start already mentioned, but some of you might have joined later. Please keep your microphones switched off. We have chosen to have this meeting format, not a webinar format, so that speaking will be possible. You will get the possibility to raise your questions after Emily's presentation. That will take about 40 minutes. If you want to have the opportunity to raise a question, please first send your question through the chat. Write your short question on the chat so that I can give you the possibility of raising the question live, and that Emily can react directly on your question. So please wait with your intervention after the end of Emily's speech. Now I have the huge honor and pleasure to introduce Emily. And on the agenda you received for this for this meeting with Emily, you could read what she has done in her life and how important she has been for the development of early childhood intervention in the world, I can say. I mean, she was founding mother of what today is a big early childhood intervention center in the United States. She has been really at the start of development of early childhood intervention in a country like Colombia, Emily's other mother country, and so many other countries. And I had the and you can see the recognition for her work, that she works for UNESCO, for UNICEF, for World Bank, all the big players in the world. Emily has put her effort there in making early childhood development or early intervention be developed in the world. And I had a big honor and pleasure to be together with Emily in 2 occasions. One in, but especially in Ukraine, in Kiev, we were together. And there I could see her ability to, in a very nice way, to convince policymakers on the highest level. We met the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine at the time, Mr. Rosenko. And after that meeting, he became really the advocate in Ukraine for early intervention. And now we have their National Council on early intervention, and that's wonderful. And in the 10 regions of the country, we have a full system now growing. In Ukraine, I have a counterpart, and it's Anna Kukurusa from Kharkiv. And I always call her the uncrowned queen of early intervention in Ukraine. But now I have to introduce Emily, and there's only one title I can give you, Emily: the uncrowned queen of early intervention of the world. So, Emily, the floor is yours. For the audience, Emily has a new computer system, so it might have some hiccups at the beginning, but no problem, we will fix it. So, Emily, the floor is yours, and be aware, 5 minutes before you end, I will warn you that time is nearly over. Okay, thank you. You're unmuted, Emily. Your microphone. You're muted.
Right. It's a very great pleasure to be with you today. And it's such a joy to see all my friends. And I know there are others that are here in the audience. So I feel as though I'm speaking to a group of friends today. I want to thank EASPD for their marvelous work and their support of ECI work around all of Europe and into Central Asia. We're extremely pleased about that. And secondly, of course, our beloved ESA and all of our friends who have worked so hard, country to country, in ECD, but now also in ECI. So this is a wonderful opportunity for me to reach out to even more of you whom I have not met as yet, but now am meeting today. And I want to tell you that it is my hope that this will be a valuable experience for you and that you will find some interesting work. I'm going to share my slideshow now, or at least try to share it. Here it should be coming up. There, are you able to see it?
Yes, Emily, and in the right mode also. So
Perfect.
excellent.
Thank you, Eric, very much for your help. I'm going to try to put there we go. Okay. Our topic is building and strengthening integrated national early childhood intervention systems. And oh no, now my slide sharing is not working. Oh, here, I'm going to try this. There we go. Okay. If it's not one way, it's another way. Our objectives today are to identify organizational elements and processes for developing or strengthening integrated national ECI systems, and to consider options for securing government and diversified support for developing robust integrated national ECI systems. And I'm requesting that you give me your questions and your interests. I'm very interested in what you have to say. And the reason is very instrumental. I'm writing a book on this topic. And as you ask questions, I will see areas that I haven't treated that should be included. So I'm really looking forward to your questions. The desired outcomes that I have for our visit is that you will become more aware of the basic elements of an integrated national ECI system, and keep them well in mind as you move forward, and that you will consider some of the options that I'm going to be discussing for including these elements in your country's efforts to develop an ECI system. So I'm hoping that this will be a very useful and valuable experience for you. At least one option I hope you will want to do. I want to emphasize at the beginning that I don't believe in cookie cutter approaches and bringing something in from one country and laying it down on another country. Each country has unique cultures, organizational and service practices, and these are very different caregiving cultures and languages. We rear our children differently from country to country, even though there are universal developmental stages that pretty much apply. Our cultures are so different, and that is extremely important. Anything we do in early childhood must fit the culture where we are working. We also have institutional cultures. Every single university or government that I go to has different ways of doing things. It's never exactly the same. And there are some things that guide coordination or lack thereof, and various kinds of rules, some not spoken, but that I have to figure out when I go to a country, and you have to figure out to be effective in your own country. And then enabling policy and governance practices vary very much from country to country. Programs and service systems, as you know, and networks. People network very differently. And then practices for quality assurance and accountability vary greatly from country to country. Everybody has strengths. Everybody is building from a good base, but everybody also has something to learn from others. What are ECI services? I'm covering this because I think that some of our people in the audience may not have worked a great deal in ECI services. So I want to just give a brief introduction to what are we talking about. Early childhood intervention services are multi-sectoral, integrated, and transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary. Transdisciplinary means where all the disciplines, all the different professionals and paraprofessionals that work in teams work through giving their ideas, and one person works with the family. Interdisciplinary means where different disciplines work separately with the family, but they work as a team to agree on how they will approach the family and support the family and ensure the family is empowered. So we have both approaches in ECI, and increasingly most countries are moving to transdisciplinary. It costs less, it's more effective, and you can cover more children. ECI services are designed to support families with young children from birth to 3 years of age. And it used to be that we were pretty much birth to 3, but now it's birth to 5 in many countries. And the reason is that we don't have comparable programs in many countries for the 3 to 5 or 6 year period even. And secondly, inclusive education has progressed much more slowly than we had anticipated. So sometimes we have no place to send the children after the age of 3, and you can't leave the children just hanging. There needs to be follow through. So in many countries, it's birth to 5. In a few countries, it goes even higher. I know of one that's up to 7 years of age, but it really should be transitioned at an earlier point, and they would agree too. And these children have at-risk situations, which means like low birth weight, preterm birth, chronic ill health, etc. Or developmental delays, which means that the child is not reaching developmental milestones or ranges of expected development on time, and that the child is beginning to fall behind in his or her development. Children with disabilities, no explanation needed, and behavioral or mental health needs. Now, behavioral, that's where you group attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder. So they are often called behavioral needs. And then mental health needs would be more children who are affected by trauma, children affected by child abuse or neglect, or some other situation that has caused disturbance in the child's development. ECI programs include a range of family-centered and individualized services to improve child development and resilience. So that's what we're trying to do. They seek to strengthen family competencies and parenting skills to help children achieve their developmental potential, and they often involve advocacy for the educational and social inclusion of these children and their families. Now, what do they usually provide in the way of services? ECI programs give oftentimes child find, which is community outreach to identify potentially eligible children. A second area is developmental screening and or physician-led surveillance and monitoring. We like to have both happening if it's possible. Referrals from neonatal intensive care units, physicians, parents, nutrition and protection services, parenting programs, childcare, pre-primary schools, etc., all figure into this. So we get our referrals from many different places. And I especially emphasize the NICUs, because that's where you can pick up the children at the earliest possible moment, working with the parents in a totally seamless way from hospital to home. Comprehensive and specialized developmental assessments are conducted always. Family, parenting, and nutritional and safety assessments are often conducted, and we find that they're very helpful. Parents love them because they're basically in the driver's seat, and they're able to discover the areas that they really want to work on. ECI eligibility and individualized family service plans are always a part of ECI services. And I will emphasize that ECI eligibility under legacy systems usually was in the hands of only a medical doctor. But now increasingly in contemporary services, ECI eligibility can be from a doctor, be from a nurse, it can be from your own staff as you do your developmental assessments and you find children with delays or disabilities or particular at-risk conditions. Individualized family service plans are always formulated with the parents taking the lead in this activity. Then regular visits in the natural environment of the child are given. And I'll go into that a little bit more later. Case management services to assist with ensuring other services that the family and child may need are put into place. And the revisions of assessments and IFSPs on a regular basis are conducted. There are a series of optional activities that may or may not be in your program, such as toy making, peer group sessions, family counseling, family support services, respite care, etc. There are a lot of optional services that are in potentially can be added, and it depends on the needs of the country, of the community, and the families. transition services from ECI services to inclusive preschool or inclusive primary school, or to a specialized program if the parents would like a child, for example, who is hearing impaired, to go to a school for children specifically who are hearing impaired. That is a type of transition as well. Advocacy and public awareness is usually done, where I think that's one of our weakest areas, and networking activities. So those are sort of the main services that you will find in most ECI programs. What is an integrated service system? What are we talking about here? An integrated service system has one lead ministry or agency and an organizational framework with other ministries such as education, health, nutrition, water and sanitation, hygiene, WASH, family welfare, justice or rights, and protection, child protection or social protection, social welfare, to ensure a coherent set of activities are conducted in all regions of a country. So they're a coherent set of activities like the services we just mentioned, but they're not necessarily always exactly the same. You have differences from region to region. One group may be working with the Roma community and have different approaches. Another one may be urban and have yet other approaches. So there's room for flexibility and innovation. The integrated system has an ECI office, a central ECI office that is usually located in the lead ministry that provides one single administration for ECI services. And that works to achieve seamless coordination, quality assurance, and full accountability to supporting community-based ECI services. The integrated system seeks to achieve a common vision, a common mission, and the same objectives, and it coordinates the system to achieve a high level of service efficiency and effectiveness. And we do that through our quality assurance activities and our accountability systems. It is recommended that integrated service systems also have a coalition, such as the Coalition of ECI Organizations of Georgia, which is a very, very strong coalition, very active, very proactive for its different members, or a network of national organizations. And networks tend to be less involved in the day-to-day and training activities and support and coaching. They more get everybody together. Coalitions, I'm finding, are very, very helpful to have in addition to the government support of the ECI programs. So that gives you the overview of integrated systems, and you may have questions around some of that. What is the major challenge faced in establishing well-functioning and effective ECI systems in Western and Eastern Europe and Central Asia? Well, I'm going to address the challenging area of legacy systems. And these are for children that with disabilities, they were really very much a part of either old therapeutic traditions of Western Europe or of the systems of the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe. And they often have very dedicated, highly trained specialists who have extensive knowledge and experience. And some of the best people in ECI I know began from the base of the legacy system that they inherited in their country. However, they tend to be managed by the medical or health sector. They feature mainly medical diagnoses conducted by physicians to establish a child's program eligibility. They provide separate therapeutic systems for each type of disability. So a child who may have cerebral palsy and a language delay will see two different people, a speech language therapist, logotherapist, or an ergotherapist for movement because of the CP needs that the child has. But they don't visit together, and there's no team in the classic legacy system. There are lots of evolving systems that do have teams. They employ therapists and other specialists that provide one-on-one therapies for each child, discipline by discipline. They provide services in rehabilitation hospitals, clinics, or centers, but rarely in the natural setting of that child, the home, childcare center, preschool, or playgrounds. They make decisions usually for the parents because they were the cognoscenti, they were the people who knew what was the most important thing to do. There was a lot of value in the old systems, but they have now begun to evolve in virtually every country of the entire region, from Central Asia to Western Europe. We now have what is an evidence base of at least 45 years of research. And what we call in general the ECI systems is that they are contemporary services. And they are mainly managed by the education sector. We did a global survey, and to our surprise, the vast majority of ECI programs around the world are located in the education sector, and that's where their main lead agency is. But some are in social protection. Many are actually in social protection or in health sectors, or in the case of Georgia, you have both social protection and health as a combined ministry, and they are there together. Although health tends to predominate, but it depends on what's going on at the time. They are family focused rather than child focused. So rather than focusing on therapists to the child, it is embracing the family and supporting the family, the parents, in how to support their child and how to do activities. They are interdisciplinary and integrated rather than disciplinary. So we're trying to get together a team of people to work. They provide balanced and comprehensive services, including several disciplines. We have the specialist called an early intervention specialist who is trained in across all of the areas of therapy and of child development, as well as ECI. And then they provide individualized services for each child and family. They focus on coaching and mentoring. They offer services in the natural environment of the child. About 80% across many, many programs in different countries, I found 80% of the visits are made in the home. About 20% are made in playgrounds, childcare centers, preschools, etc. And they ensure that service decisions are made not by the specialists or physicians. The decisions are made by the parents or legal guardians. They are informed decisions and we support them, but they definitely, for reasons of parental rights and child rights, it is with the parents. So this is where there is an evolution. Now, most of the countries in Western, Eastern Europe and in Central Asia are already evolving to the contemporary approaches. So what we see are gradations. It's not just black and white. 10 years ago, it was much more black and white. What are the key elements of integrated ECI systems? There are 8 of them, as I am seeing it these days. One is that they have an established and recognized legal basis. They have a normative basis of law with core principles and rules for conduct. Normative in the sense of this is what you should do. This is how to move ahead to be most effective. So the norms are established, like standards. The third one is integrated organizational and leadership system. The fourth is ECI, interdisciplinary workforce with a professional development system. I bring them together because you really can't separate that. The fifth is public awareness, policy advocacy, and community outreach activities. As I mentioned, this is the weakest area. The sixth one is community-based developmental screening, identification, and referral process. So that initial bringing families into the program is an extremely important area, and that's part of the integrated system. Then integrated management and a supervisory system for quality assurance. And this has been the invisible part in a way, and yet it's so terribly important. It's not very glamorous, but if it doesn't work well, your system will fall down. And then the final one is very, very, very important. Multisectoral monitoring and evaluation system for accountability and planning. I'm going to take each of these and talk about the options for key ECI elements, because you will be making decisions in your country, or you will be, based on the decisions you've already made, making further decisions. First of all, that's number one, was the established and recognized legal basis. The options are three, basically. A strategic plan with an action plan, legislation, laws, and inclusion of ECI in sections of other policies, or two or three options together. The strongest one, from my point of view, is the strategic plan with an action plan for implementation. And this is critically important for moving forward in really thoroughly planning your system. However, your country may have an institutional culture where legislation is considered to be more important than policy and strategic plans and action plans. And if that's the case, a law may be required. But laws tend to be short. They tend not to have tons of details of management. In the United States, they do. They have lots and lots of details. But in many countries, they're very short documents. And you don't have enough there to really plan your system. You have 3 or 4, maybe 5 major points that are made. The system is established, so-and-so agency is going to be the head of it, and the following structure will be there, and they will meet at the following periodicity, and they will develop the system. Well, that isn't enough to run a system. So your legislation, if you only depend on that, might be quite weak. Then there's the possibility of not doing either of those things, but just including ECI sections in other policies. It could be a national development plan. It could be an ECD plan or an ECCD plan, and or an ECEC plan for Europe. But guess what? It isn't enough, because everybody will say, well, it's there, but we don't really have any form. We don't have any real document that says that we exist. And so it turns out to be the weakest. So from my point of view, from the point of view of really running a good system, the strategic plan and action plan is the best. But you may want to complement it with legislation, with a law that establishes certain things, that says that the strategic plan will be developed. It might take you more time to do that, but you may find that to be helpful. And always include ECI in every other plan. When you hear that there is a social protection plan going up, or a health plan, or a national development plan, you rush in and you talk with the people, with the minister if you can, with the deputy minister if you can't, talk to the minister. You talk to the department heads to make sure that there is going to be an ECI section in that particular new plan that's coming up. And so as I put there 2 or 3 options together, basically it's all 3 for some countries, and it's strategic plan and inclusion of ECI sections for other countries. The second one, normative basis, rather detailed. National ECI guidelines and procedures are absolutely essential in every country for running an ECI system. You have to have the principles. We have pretty well, we know what these are. And in the book, I will be putting out all of the how. I don't have time today to do that, but there are many topic headings that should be included. Everyone should fit your country. You should never use exactly what another country has done. You can learn from what other countries have done, what has worked for them, what hasn't, but you have to have your own. You need, on the basis of the guidelines and procedures, and these are sequential, the service and personnel and performance standards. You may not want to have personnel and performance standards. You may want to put them together. Or you may just only want to do service standards at first. You think that that's all you can do at the first. but at least have service standards. If you can, the 3 are excellent to be able to do. And not minimum standards. Minimum standards don't work in ECI. They have to be good standards. If you're going to do this work, the children are precious, the families are precious. They have to be not minimal standards. They must be very much good standards. And then once you've got some standards in place, then you can work on accreditation and licensing of ECI programs, because you will be referring to the national ECI guidelines and procedure, be referring to your standards as to what makes it possible to be licensed or accredited. It's the same thing, different words are used in different countries. And this will give also information about official recognition, qualifications, and approval of services. So this gives you the bona fides to be able to move forward. The third area is integrated organizational framework and leadership system. And this for some people is like the hardest one. And this is for management, coordination, planning, and service provision. You have to choose your lead ECI sector, your national multisectoral ECI council. A national multisectoral ECI technical committee is a good idea to have, or a national coalition. National ECI office, regional ECI committees, community ECI committees, and a national coalition or network of ECI organizations. Those are the general areas of organizational development that are good to include. I'll be covering that more under process. ECI Interdisciplinary Workforce and Professional Development System is the fourth one. Here we have an interdisciplinary group of professionals, paraprofessionals, and volunteers. Increasingly, people are realizing that ECI programs to be cost effective, cover more families, and really sustainable, that we need to use trained paraprofessionals who are paid. They are not volunteers. It doesn't work to have that work done by volunteers. So professionals and paraprofessionals are what are needed. And you have to outline pretty much what it is that you need to be training to have in place. And yes, there is a big role for volunteers. I don't have time to go into it today, but that is a very interesting area. But the one thing is that volunteers should not be working on family files, because they don't have the professional training that's adequate to keep them from talking to their neighbors about the people that they're working with. So volunteers have to have supportive roles, but not decision-making roles within the group. It's just a fact of life with these particular programs. Pre-service training and continuous in-service training is absolutely critical, and there should be a whole plan to do that. Certification and licensing is needed for these for the professional positions. And then career paths are oftentimes wanted. And these tend to be developed after you have done the first 3 levels. And those include career paths tend to be somewhat informal. Ladders tend to be vertical, where you're going from junior to regular professional to senior professional. But lattices is what we're looking at more and more with a certain fascination, where people not only are in a vertical situation, but they move horizontally, or they even can move diagonally across different parts of the country, for example, to do certain work. So career paths can be quite flexible, but you should outline them. And then salary scales linked to experience, training, performance, and seniority. Those are always tricky to put together. Every country does it differently, but it's not something you do at first. You have to develop the system first to be able to get to the point where you can have efficient and well figured out salary scales, other than the most rudimentary ones. Public awareness, policy advocacy, and community outreach. Here, a plan for public awareness communications, policy advocacy, and community outreach is needed. An annual public awareness campaign, or 2 or 3, is a really good idea, and we're going more and more in that direction. Policy advocacy initiatives linked to systems development are very important. So that's where your policy briefs come in, webinars, now that we do everything virtually, but meetings, visits with the minister, vice minister, with deputies in the parliament, etc. You want to be sure that you're doing your policy advocacy all the time. And it's not easy to do if you're not attuned to doing that. So you have to learn how to do it. For all of us, it was a strain when we first started to do it. We just have to learn how to do it. Then community outreach and child find to identify children and families needing ECI services. This community outreach is linked intimately to policy advocacy, to public awareness campaigns, to all the different types of outreach activities that you have. So those all go together as a very important part of your work. Community-based developmental screening, identification, and referral processes. Here, you really have to sit down and figure out, you can do this as a part of your strategic plan, a national plan for developmental screening, identification, referrals, which includes the selection, adaptation, and validation of a screening tool. I've seen countries struggle trying to develop their own screening tools. I finally decided that it's better to use one that we know works well, that handles ranges of what is expected, normed capacity of children. I think that it's better to then adapt, translate, field test, basically evaluate. And then after that, when you have something that you think is working quite well, validate. But it's important to have a screening tool in place. Training for screening, and it should be such a tool that parents can do it, caregivers can do it, teachers, nurses, not just physicians. This is something that can be done by anyone. Once trained, it takes about a half a day maximum. Sure, it should take, depending upon the one you use. It should not take more than that. Then referrals to ECI and how those referrals work. In the United States, we have some states where the referrals are like 80% lost. It's Mississippi. It's just unbelievably bad. So the referrals have to be done in a way that you have reporting back to the referral sources and carry through. So referral monitoring becomes very important. Then the seventh area is integrated management and supervisory system for quality assurance. And this has been one that's been flying under the radar. Managerial system is needed to support all ECI services. Supervisory framework should be developed, and you can do this in your strategic plan at national, regional, and community service levels. I like to think of them as supervisory pools. You can have supervision, a supervisor within your program as for your region, or also somebody coming from the national level. When you're small, you start out small, but you build up supervision over time. And we like to link reflective supervision, which is a very refined and supportive type of basically coaching and mentoring that is done by a supervisor with personnel. And we link that with in-service training, or think of it as just-in-time training. When you see that a program has a series of needs, then you help them identify those needs themselves so that they say they want to learn what you think they need to learn, but you're not telling them. And then you schedule those. So every time the supervisor comes in, they deal with a topic selected number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And that becomes a continuing system of in-service training combined with reflective supervision. And then performance reviews that are linked to professional development, certification, and licensing. In other words, rather than being punitive or being like an inspection, instead it's what can we do to help you do your job more and better, and how can you reach those goals that you have for your career to become a leader in your community or in your region and obtain the supervision that you wish.
Emily, you have five more minutes.
That will be fine. I thank you very much. Multisectoral ECI monitoring and evaluation is the last area. Monitoring and evaluation is for program implementation, and it's extremely important. We have found that by including work on indicators, definitions, measures, templates, and targets, that the country can move forward with really knowing what they are achieving with the ECI system. It's also important to do studies on the rates of children with at-risk situations, developmental delays, disabilities, behavioral and mental health needs. And longitudinal research should be considered, as well as the design and adaptation and translation of various program internal elements. So though this is going a little faster at the end, that doesn't mean it isn't terribly important. It is absolutely critically important. With regard to process, the major phases are the ECI situation analysis and consultations. So because we believe in participatory planning with everybody in being involved, all ECI programs, even if they're mainly legacy, everybody involved in this and joining hands to try to build the system. Then initial systems development, then ECI organizational development, then the establishment of the legal basis. And notice how that is, you don't start with that. You start by getting these things going forward, and then finally the development and financing of the national level system. Everything to achieve your goals, you have to plan well from the beginning. Everything is in the preparation. So conducting the ECI situation analysis and consultations, there's a slide here that covers the different areas that we include in this, and I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Then we begin initial systems development, establishing a general vision, supporting all existing ECI services and pilot projects while planning the system, because we really have to build on our strengths. What is it we already know to do? And then assist the existing legacy services to gain additional training and to do some exchanges with contemporary ECI programs in their own country or region. Then identify and study the lessons learned by existing ECI services and encouraging the addition of ECI sections in relevant sectoral and multisectoral policies and laws. We want to focus on ECI organizational development, selecting the lead ministry, deciding whether we're going to have a temporary committee or a permanent committee. I've seen both in countries, both work. Depends on the stage of development of the country and how certain they are of what they want to have in the long term. I think it's best if you can go all the way to a steering committee and a technical committee from the very beginning, but not everybody can. I mean, a council or a technical committee. And then you can consider establishing an ECI office. It may be very easy to do that at the beginning or may not be. You may have to wait until later. So these are trade-offs that you have to decide what to do. You always can complete the rest of the system later. You have to make those hard decisions about the legal basis. What are you going to go for and in what order? The strategic plan and law, would you get the office going? Will you get ECI community committees going, which is very helpful. I always leave regional ECI committees until late. They're usually formed from top down and bottom up. Then suddenly they say we need help at the region level, and indeed they do. And then consider developing an ECI coalition or network. So that comes into that point. And then you have the development of the system and finances. And here, after preparing all of the normative instruments and getting the supervisory systems and everything together, which are put in at this point, you then move to the issue of financing. And here it's very important to gain strong government support for ECI in order to ensure your country will fulfill the commitments to the CRC and the CRPD and other rights documents, and to ensure all children achieve their full potential and become productive citizens. It's really important that you explain these points to your Minister of Finance, Deputy Minister of Finance. I'm emphasizing going to the top because that's where you get change. And it will go much faster if you do it that way rather than going from the bottom up. And I know that's challenging for some who are in NGOs, but that's the way that this works out. And you have to do it in collaboration with the government units that are already wanting to have the ECI movement going forward. It turns out that governmental resources usually provide core funding for recurrent ECI program costs and some developmental costs, in-service training, tools, and materials costs, not all of them. What we find is that of a typical ECI program, 75 to 80% is covered by the national government. When I say national government, I should say all governments in the country, because it's your central government, which is your lead agency, and your partner ministries and agencies, and they all give in different ways to the ECI program. Regional governments cover a lot in quite a few countries. States, provinces, departments, as in Colombia, put a lot of money into ECI programs. And then district or municipal governments also put money in, large cities especially, will put a lot of money in making an inequality for certain more rural regions. So it can be challenging. But you do need to have that coverage. If you're successful, you will have, if there is a regional government, because you have, like Montenegro does not have regional governments, but where you do find regional governments, you will have a money from the central government, from your regional government, and from your municipal government. And policy advocacy must be conducted with ministries of finance, the parliament's very important. Parliamentarians can put tremendous pressure on the ministries. They can say, we've got this plan here and this law, and we aren't seeing you moving. We want to see more budget for this program. And they call in the people from the ministry to talk about it. Pretty soon your program starts going up. They talk to the finance minister. The parliamentarians get that up. They're the voice of the people. So that can be very, very helpful. And then it's very important that other ministries, parallel ministries like Interior, who would deal with decentralization in many countries, or Justice, or Communications, are on your side, and that they will help you out to do this work. And I know it's challenging, but it's necessary. Types of government support for ECI programs. Annual contracts are given in some countries, often by the number of children to be served at any one time. Annual grants are given in other countries, and that is often by the achievement of certain outputs or outcomes. What is it you're trying to do? How many people are you trying to reach? Hopefully, how are children and families improving, and how pleased are they with the services? Which the secret is they're always pleased. So you always want to measure parental preference. Per capita payments, depending upon the number of children served per month or year. This is yet another approach that is given. It's sort of a combination of a grant and a contract in different ways. A voucher system, as you find in very few countries, but they do exist definitely. Georgia has one, and it is provided to families who give them in turn to the programs of their choice. So that can work. It has some rigidities that our dear Georgian friends would tell us, but it works. The one that I personally do not like, which we use in the United States, is a government insurance reimbursement system with reimbursement for services rendered. And it turns out to be very expensive and very complex to manage. In my center that I no longer run, but that is located in Texas, there is a room with about 15 people, and they do nothing but work on this reimbursement. It is the biggest waste of money that I can imagine. I would much prefer to see it done in a different way, but that's what they have to do in order to be funded for their program.
Emily, can you round up, please?
I'm on the verge.
Time is over.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Just this one little thing that's the last point, which is that 20 to 25% has to be diversified funding support. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this is that It's so important. It's a new way of thinking for some of you. We have to go after national and international foundation grants, NGOs, faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, and community-based organizations can support ECI programs. Employee and participant cooperatives, as in Colombia, also do it. Private sector support, employee funds, benefactors, fundraising activities. This is the one that nobody likes, but after they start doing it, everybody likes. You can earn a tremendous amount of money for your program through fundraising activities once you get into the habit of doing it. And parent fees, if you absolutely have to do it on a sliding scale, but it's really, really hard to establish a sliding scale. So now I would like to have us begin a dialogue, Eric. And I really want to know, what is your country's situation? What are your questions? What are your comments? And what are your plans? So I would really love it if people could, are you going to have people speak and give their
Yes,
their questions? That would be great.
definitely, Emily. We have one question of from a person you know very well who wrote it down, but I will give her the floor. I would like to invite also other participants to raise their hand if they would like to react or and preferably have a question. Down at the bottom of your screen on the right side, you have the reactions button. And when you click on that, you can find the option to raise hand. So, and then you will come in my screen and I will see who is raising a hand, and then I give you the floor. But first, the floor to our well-known Dragana Sretenov, who was the ECI coordinator, if I'm right, at the Open Society Foundation, and supported a lot also our partners in Ukraine. Dragana, you wrote down your question, but I would like to give you the floor and raise your question to Emily and speak directly.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yes.
It is a pleasure to see you and Emily. So warm greetings to Emily, the organizers and the participants, and thank you so much for this presentation, and particularly for selecting this important topic for this webinar. My question goes to the role of the higher ed. I would like to actually hear from Emily what is her take on the need for transforming higher education so that future generations of relevant professionals are better prepared for the implementation of contemporary ECI services, which are based on the family strengths and interdisciplinary model of providing services in natural environments. We have learned from the experience of Open Society Foundation that he has actually covered a significant number of countries in the region. Some colleagues are currently present today in this webinar, and we have felt that actually maybe bringing a higher ed earlier to a dialogue of transforming and developing ECI systems would have been really important. And a follow-up question is, what should be the role of emerging positive ECI practices in some countries for supporting the reform of higher ed in this field? Because we also found that in many countries, positive emerging practices is actually developing before the capacity of the systems are there to support the training, pre-service training, but also ongoing support of the emerging ECI system.
Okay, thank you, Dragana. Okay, Emily, I hope you could understand everything because the connection was not that
It was 100%,
clear.
but I think I got it. And
okay, thank you, Dragana.
Dragana's voice, and I send you the warmest hug. I'm so missing seeing you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful just to be in contact. I do believe that a higher education plan is needed in each country for ECI. And that means everybody who is a professor, is in the universities, are in the ECI programs, the different people in the government who participate, they all need to get together and work through a plan that everybody agrees will help to meet their goals and objectives, that they have a common vision and they build it together. Otherwise, what you end up is with different universities going their own way, thinking that that will be the area that's best for their university, best for their students. And it's understandable, having been in higher education a lot, I understand that. But I know that from the point of view of the ECI systems, you have to have a plan. Secondly, there are some innovative approaches that I don't think have been tried adequately in the ECI field. And I worked for USAID for 6 years, and I was in one of the things that I did amongst many was we had higher education partnerships around the world. And this is where we paired universities from the United States, say, with a group in Zambia and a group in Pakistan. And they worked together on a common concern, which could be child development. And they built a system where they had equal level of benefits to each of the universities. So some universities gained international experience, other universities gained the knowledge of some work that was done, say, in Zambia. In other cases, they wanted a particular specialist who came and was supporting their university professors in building a new faculty. Whatever it was, everybody got a benefit out of it. And I think we need to do that in ECI because we need to have a coherent plan where we're going to meet our needs for the professionals and paraprofessionals that we want to have in these programs. But also we need to have, we have to have greater collegiality. I've been working for the recent months on the Global Partnership Strategy for Early Childhood, which is led by UNESCO. It's going to be launched in July with full collaboration of UNICEF, World Bank, OECD, various EU groups. It's just been an enormous, wonderful French group, Ensemble. And they've just really been bringing together. There is one of the activities in a strategic priority is to build an international research and international training effort. And I think that would be a vehicle for this. And you will find, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, you will find ECI is prominently a part of the global partnership strategy. So there will be opportunities, I think, to rethink through not only country by country, because ministers of education and all of their staffs are going to be a part of this, ministers of finance, but also we will be able to speak across countries, across regions, within regions. So there will be an action results team. It's called the results team for GPS, and that will be moving forward. So I'm hoping that we will be able to move forward the higher education agenda for ECI. So Dragana, your question is very, very pertinent, and we need you to help out with that. I think that is an extremely important endeavor that needs to move forward. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, great. Emily, some people posted some nice remarks and greetings to you. I will read them from Sonia Vasic.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you so much. Inspiring. From Aredis Yanes, so nice to see you again, Emily. Brilliant as always. Well, compliments. And from Georgia, Maya Kabunia, greetings from Georgia. The presentation was very impressive as always. Thank you so much, Emily. But we also have another question. And I would like to give the floor, so please unmute yourself to Ida Ferdinandi.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everybody. I just have one very quick question. I hope it can be also answered quickly. I was wondering about examples of good practice, like countries that you could name as examples of good practice in terms of government level coordination of early childhood development, ideally a middle income country. You know, in terms of, you know, who the lead ministry was or agency and how this was dealt with at the government level, because I know of some countries where ECI approaches are being piloted, contemporary models of ECI being piloted at municipal level. So I'm just wondering, you know, how once this piloting phase is over, how the government takes over and you know, what are the prerequisites for institutionalizing ECI at the country level? Thank you very much.
Yes, with pleasure. It's not an easy question to answer, though. One country that I would like to mention is Australia, where they had built up an absolutely superb system at every level for ECI. Recently, they went to an insurance reimbursement system, which has messed them up a bit, but they're rescuing themselves from the system that was applied to the adults. And then they thought, oh, well, let's just put in ECI too. And it led to terrible distortions of the system. But that one, while it was working was really marvelous. The United States has, in certain states, some very well functioning ones, and that I know is high income. Portugal works through its public health system and has a system that is quite outstanding. I've been very impressed with how Georgia moved from what was very much a legacy system in its governmental format in dealing with this to a much more open system that Maya Gabunia and Rusico and many others in the country helped the government make these transitions. It wasn't easy. There were major changes that had to occur, but I think that the Georgian experience is one that you would enjoy reviewing. And it's something that I feel we should do a study on, because we really should give some of the lessons learned out of that particular initiative. Eric mentioned a bit ago the achievements in Ukraine, and it is evolving, definitely. It hasn't come full way. They still have some more to do. So we have to look at that. Spain has a growing system and some wonderful leaders that I think is definitely worth looking at as a system. Sweden is a country that has an ECI system, which it tends to be a little bit old style, but it is definitely a functioning system that works for the good development of the children. Finland is known for its tremendous leadership in this field and has moved ECI work together with inclusive education in an almost seamless way. Really impressive initiatives. Norway has also done quite a bit that is definitely of value to study. So every country has its positive aspects and its areas for growth. There is no perfect ECI system in the world. There may never be a perfect system, but if the country is truly dedicated to its children and it really wants to achieve the kinds of goals that we all hold dear in our hearts, I am sure that every country will move toward an ever more perfecting system. And what we have to do is be alert to risks. Once we get them started, risks that can occur that can undercut some of what is done. But I found that generally it's a forward movement in every country where they are begun. Could I ask Ida where she comes from, what country she is from?
Sure, Emily. I'm from Montenegro, which I think you visited about a decade ago.
Yes, that's right. I love Montenegro. Yes, indeed. it is a very, very interesting country, and you have some extremely well-prepared people in this area, but not a fully functioning ECI system yet. So there's a lot to be done there. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased that there will be work soon going forward in ECI in Montenegro more solidly.
Great.
Yes,
Emily,
thank you.
okay, thank you, Ida, for your question. There are some more questions. Anna Kukuruza, the uncrowned queen of early intervention in Ukraine, was stimulated by you mentioning the Ukraine example, and she has not a question, but some very interesting information. Even also for me, myself, I read it here. But Anna, can you jump in, please?
Well, hello, everybody. Emily, it's nice to hear you. Your presentation really very rich, and actually it is not a question, but I would like to share the very good news. Exactly today, in maybe 1 hour ago, government of Ukraine, they approved a very important document for Ukraine. It's concept about development ECI system in Ukraine at the national level. So it's like for us, it's very important. And,
wow.
And I would say that, yeah. And I just want to share this very, very good news.
I am
because
so
it's very, it looks like you mentioned in your presentation this topic as well. And so now we are in a family.
well. I'm so thrilled, so happy for you. Anytime, if you have any questions or you think I can help you, just send an email. And we can talk by Zoom to support you. That's just wonderful news. Congratulations, Anna.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And congratulations to Eric, who has faithfully supported you for these years.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Anna, for providing us with this wonderful information. It's really stimulating. There's someone with the microphone on. Irina was. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for muting. Another question from Rick Healy. Rick, can you jump in, please? Rick Healy, are you there?
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I'm with the Early Childhood Authority in Abu Dhabi. I'm currently in Canada right now, and I'll be relocating there shortly. I was jotting down some notes. I thought you mentioned we're putting together some work around early intervention and screening and early diagnosis. I thought you mentioned there was half-day training for parents in screening. And I'm not familiar with that. Is there some programs that you might be able to recommend that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Sure. Let's see. You can easily reach me at Vargas Baron, my last name without the hyphen, at hotmail.com. I keep that old email address because everybody can find me no matter how many years ago we worked together. So be sure to just send me an email because that is a very technical issue, and I need to give you a longer explanation. So I think that would be the best thing. Be happy to help out.
Thank you so much.
That, sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, great. Another question. Tatiana Aderikina. Can you jump in, please?
Yes, thank you, Eric. Hi, Emily. Hi, colleagues. Yes, it's really nice to see you, and best regards from Kazakhstan. Obviously, we are still in the stage of defining where we go in early childhood interventions, and it was rewarding to meet you today to see how it's all framed. My question would be about ICF, because Kazakhstan is planning to shift from old classification medical model to social model. And are there any lessons learned from the countries who are jumping in or introducing ICF, how it fits within the early intervention concept, and also if there is something on child developmental monitoring, because I'm sure my colleague previously already asked about screening. We would like to talk about it a little bit more as well. Thank you.
When you say ICF, you're standing, that's for International Child Find. What is the term?
International classification of
Oh, the ICF.
functioning, ICF, yes.
Sorry,
Functionality, yeah, absolutely.
It's a short, I use a longer one. The ICF is the functional model that was developed to get around the labeling of children. So it's what can a child do? It's a good thing to learn and to use, but it doesn't provide you, I mean, you don't have to, in ECI, we do not only use classifications of ICF. You can have a child with a developmental delay that will not be found in the ICF. It's not a functional issue. And so we have to, I have a new earbuds and they're not sticking in. They tend to move out. What I'm recommending is that you instead think in terms of having a comprehensive developmental assessment for all children who go into your ECI program. And in that way, you'll be able to, and plus any referrals from physicians, be they neonatal neonatologists, be they neuro pediatricians, be they just regular pediatricians or family doctors, whatever diagnosis there is, you usually accept them. There's usually not a question. However, that still will not tell you what the child can do, what the child's strengths are, and what the child is next going to be learning as a developmental capacity. In order to do that, you need to have a developmental assessment. It should be comprehensive, covering all the different domains of the child's development. So to do that, you want to have not just the ICF as a labeling approach, which is still labeling. It's still labeling. So what you want to have is functionally what can the child do, which you will get from a developmental assessment. So your country will want to choose one or two very well adapted, and in some cases there you will find they are well adapted to, if you want to use Russian in this particular case, you may not wish to use Russian, but it depends on what your decision is. And there are a series of different developmental assessments that you could use. That is a question that needs to be studied carefully, because there are certain rules around comprehensive developmental assessments that have to be observed, and they have to be well done. So people have to be well trained to do it, and it takes a little bit of time to train each person. Whereas for screening, you can train a person in a morning or an afternoon. With a developmental assessment, you want to spend much more time on it. You want them to be really expert.
Thank you, Emily. Time is over. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting presentation, and clearly there we could talk for hours. But I would like to end with some more remarks from participants, like Vasilka, who opened the meeting, saying thank you ESPD for organizing this event. Thank you, Eric, for initiative, and thank you, Emily, for your presentation. Message from Liana Gent, the General Director of ESA. Warm congratulations to all those who made this great success possible in Ukraine. So this is for Anna Kukuruza and also Irina Roshkovich, they are online, and Oksana Kivonokova, I saw her too online, so big compliments there. There is Kuisinoi Maksudova. Also, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and the online training that you recommend to ECI. Well, may I answer that question? Please become member or from the ESA or from ESPD, where you find two wonderful groups, working group, member forum, and the joint learning lab on ECI. And we are organizing trainings, and you have the possibility to have peer support and share your knowledge with others who work in the same field. There are greetings from Moldova, from Portugal, from Serbia. I'm sorry, there's a nice reaction from Serbia, but we sorry, Dragana Koruga, but we don't have time anymore. We have to finish this meeting now. I'd like to thank you again very much, Emily, Isa, for supporting this webinar or this presentation from thanks for the ESPD and ISA and the colleagues who behind the screen worked on this event. So thank you all for your presence, for your time spent here on this very important subject. Messages are really flying in. We will collect them and send them to you, Emily, so you can read them later, because there's no time now. So Emily, thanks again. Muchísimas gracias. And I hope to see you soon. And it was a great offer for you also to our Ukraine partners to be in touch again and to work together. So thank you all. Have a great day and take care. Bye-bye to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you to everybody.
Bye.